it's good we continue, we start with our session. So thank you so much, our participants, for joining this session, question and answer with problem solving. I mean, question and answer on problem solving of our immunization training challenges with our instructional designer, Julie. So I'm going to give you some directions how you can interact during your stay in this session. So please, those of you who are joining us, just tell us where you are joining us from, which city and which country. And please don't hesitate to participate actively with Julie. You need to listen and ask a question, whatever you want regarding to immunization challenge. And whenever you want to speak in this panel, ask to share your audio and video so that I can accept you. But please, if you are not speaking in the panel, don't ask, because this panel accommodates only few people. So those of you who will only share your question or any discussion, I will accept your request. Once your question or your discussion, you did your question and discussion, you will leave the panel for others to join for the same question and discussions. And we will this session will work like, we will have an opening remarks from our guest speaker, Julie, an instructional designer, and she will really, she's those of you whom you took level 1 Teach to Reach course, you knew her. She has took us with a very, very good instructions, analysis, how we can encounter with immunization training agendas. And we will stay throughout the session with her. And for those of our discussion and our discussion points that my team's my rapporteurs are also joining me here to take note of all our discussions, and I will share you the links for you to download what our speaker has discussed with us, and the rapporteurs, the notice our rapporteurs took. So Julie, thank you so much for once again for joining us. It will be, I'm very sure that it will be an amazing to stay with you here in the session, and our participants will have a very good interaction with you. So please, I leave the floor for you, Julie, to present your your experience on the topic we are discussing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that introduction. Yes, I've been involved with Teach to Reach for a few years now. I was at the one in Barcelona and the one in Dar es Salaam, and obviously filmed videos in February, just as COVID was getting started, for the Teach to Reach Level 1. So I've been involved for a few years with this. I'm an instructional designer, and I do all sorts of different type of content, but I have worked on specifically some curriculum related to immunization, and some curriculum related to infection prevention control, and some of the things that I think everybody is dealing with right now. So I am happy to see questions. If anybody's got a particular question that they'd like to ask, that would be great.
Yes, I hope any of our participants who want to ask, especially regarding to immunization training challenges. We knew Julie in her presentation, and very constructive learning skills that she took us with. So please, I welcome anyone who wants to ask about this topic. And if you want to join us in the panel for discussion and question, please ask for sharing your video and audio, and I will accept you.
Yes, thank you, Julie, and thank you, Fidwi. We have 29 people in the room right now. Fidwi, would you go to the slide where we do have a couple of questions for participants in the room? So if you could go to that slide, the one with the questions. And we do have Solange in the panel. Solange, do you have any challenges or questions for Julie when you design your immunization training? And of course, if you would like to interact, tell us who you are and where you connect from.
Hello, thank you. Hello, everyone. Hello, Julie and Fidwi. Happy to be here. Yes, during the Teach to Reach Level 1 certification, I wrote on a project on how to fill the gap in statistical data analysis among immunization professionals. Because I noticed that most of the time that surveys are conducted, the data are not well exploited, and some of the decisions are not taken because the analysis is not able to be done by those immunization professionals. So one of my challenges was to fill that gap, to help them understand the methods, to be able to analyze their data by themselves. However, I've not been able to implement the project because I was still structuring the plan, still developing the method in order to facilitate the understanding of the data analysis. So my question to Julie is that for that case, in the case we are trying to fill the gap in statistics to a group of people, and you know that they don't have a background in statistics, what are the top tips you can use to make them understand, to develop skills among them? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. That's a wonderful question. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think with something like data analysis skills, you've got kind of two different things. One is really developing the skill of being able to kind of think through a problem and design, solutions for doing data analysis and deal with a lot of, information that may not be structured perfectly. And those are pretty complicated skills for someone to learn. They take a long, they can take a long time to get good at that. So I would look at it from two different points of view. Is one, how do we develop that skill over time? But two, what are some really simple, quick things they could do that would get them started doing data analysis, but that you can give them a fairly clear set of instructions to do? So are there some really simple tasks that they could use the data, to answer, 4 or 5 questions that they might be trying to understand from the data? Can you give them step by step, do this, do this, do this, so that that's something that they can do immediately, even if they don't have these bigger picture skills? So looking for what are some immediate, easy things that they can do to get some value, and then also look at the question of how are we developing the skill kind of longer term, because you're not going to, unfortunately, be able to quickly develop kind of high level data analysis skills. But if you can have some quick ways into actually starting to use data immediately that are simple, then they can practice with those and then add on to that with the higher skills.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you so much for the response. We have a question in our chat from Adriana. What do you see as some of effective strategies to train large amount of health workers that does not rely on typical cascade training? So
yeah, that's a big, hard problem too, isn't it? Because cascade training takes a while to roll out, and you've obviously been dealing with very short timeframes for some of this. Obviously, the trying to ensure that the procedures that we're asking them to learn are as simple as possible and as straightforward as possible, but then also looking at, are there any ways that you can get the basic materials out, whether it's digital or something that can be done with text messages, or something that can be kind of gotten out quickly, because trying to do it through cascade training it takes a long time to get through all the levels. The other thing is, having good job aid procedures that they can follow, because the idea that somebody's going to be fully trained in a very short period of time is probably not realistic. Another way to do it might be to break up some of the roles. So if there's more than one, if there's multiple people at a site, can you train somebody on this part of it, and then they can become the expert in their group on that piece of it, and then everybody can kind of own different pieces and share that knowledge, but there's somebody there who has gotten the full training of just that piece. There's a number of different ways of doing it. Trying to, make sure that you're not changing, that you're using what they already understand as much as possible, and just kind of highlighting where this is different. And then the other piece would be looking at, can you send out little refresher pieces, again, maybe text messages or something, because it's happening quickly, you're not going to get everything. So maybe you can kind of do little reminders or little pieces that follow the main training, so that you can continue to emphasize some of the important things.
Thank you, Julie. This is really very, very important to note what you described with the question. So more people are joining us. I once again want to remind them, please, all of you, tell us who you are, where you connect from, and if you completed Teach to Reach Level 1 certification, because this is the most important, where you can take more lessons from Julie and ask your questions to Julie about training designers. What are your major challenges? Give an example of trainings you designed and organized if necessary. So this is just a notice to our participants. We have one more question on the chat, Julie, from Amel Al-Tahir. What are the main tips to design training targeting an area with serious mistrust of community towards vaccination? This is especially considering this COVID-19, a lot of misconceptions over there we hear from social media and so on. So this is a very good question, I think. Julie, over to you, please.
Yeah, I think when there's mistrust issues, the first question to ask is, who do those people trust? Do they trust people who look like them and sound like them, or do they trust specific people within their community? The question is, if they're going to mistrust messages that are coming from the government or from the media or something like that, we have that problem in the US where some people mistrust those. So then the question becomes, who can we get to help share the messages that are important, that they do trust, that they do feel, secure? And so sometimes it's someone actually from their community who can help amplify the messages and try to counteract the mistrust, or at least someone that is recognizable to them, that looks, that seems familiar to them, seems like the kind of person who they would trust in their community. I'm working with a program about nutrition information right now, and we found that it's very, very important that the person talking to them sound like someone that's in their community, that they don't sound too official or too academic, but the people giving the messages about nutrition are recognizable as people that they might be their neighbor, or might be somebody in their in their town or in their community. And so that's a big piece of asking the questions about, well, whose opinion do you trust, or who are you paying attention to on this? And can we use the message either directly from those people or somebody who's at least like those people?
Interesting.
By the way, if people in the audience have answers to these or strategies that would work, that have worked, I would love for other people to share what they've been doing, because that would be wonderful.
Can I comment, please?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, please. Definitely, because we have some in the plenary. So I first give to Felicie the chance to say something on the discussion, and I continue to next to you to Amel. So when we hear from both, we just continue our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity given. I'm Felicia Ibino for the special UNICEF, Nigeria, Abuja, Nigeria, the country office. Talking about this training design, or talking, maybe let me just speak from the question Julie put forward. Who do these people trust? Can actually listen to. We had an experience here in FCT. There is a particular sect who trusted the traditional leader, and coincidentally, the traditional leader happened to be a health worker. He was a former health worker before he was crowned. So it was so easy for us to pay advocacy visit to him, to update his level, because he was a community health extension worker before he was crowned the traditional leader for that community. And coincidentally, the sect that we're talking about, our cattle rearers, they trust him a lot. So we had to visit him to update his knowledge about it. And in fact, he was put at the forefront of that information dissemination forum. And we gave him the stand to really educate our group in Nigeria. And this actually worked. And things started turning around because there was this high level of vaccine hesitancy in that community, in all the sects, in all the different districts. We call them ward in Nigeria. So in that, I'm talking about FCT, the case scenario of the Federal Capital Territory. But this worked because, based on what Julie said, they trusted him, trusted the information he gave out, and he was able to organize them as to training in their different clusters. So back to what you said, who do they trust? Let's identify who that community we trust, and then we give basic information, and it is that leader that we now introduce or usher in what we call entry, usher in the facilitator, and he will be there. So we need actually to educate and give our community leaders the right information, or whoever is trusted within that sect, within that population.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Julie, would you say something before we go to Amel on what Felicie has said?
That is a wonderful example. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's exactly right. And I think if you ask some of these influential people and you say, we need your help to figure out how to make sure that the information going to these people is good, then they become part of the effort. And they feel like their expertise and their position is being respected. And then they feel that they're also working on how do we get good information out to people, as opposed to, like I said, an outside expert who has no credibility in a community. So thank you so much, Felicia, for that wonderful example.
Thank you, Julie. Amel, should we hear from you, maybe from your experience? I know you have been an amazing participant of this conference. So anything you want to react in this, you want to contribute in this discussion, please.
Thank you, and hello, everyone. And thank you for the opportunity. I'm so happy to speak to Julie. I do remember the time because I have completed level 1 to reach and 2 and Violaine. So just yesterday when I saw the email which sent by Rida, so I gone through the presentation, 2 or 3 presentations just to brainstorm myself. And you have really answered my question. Initially, I put the question on the chat box. I thought that we would not be given a chance to speak. But there is one thing now come to my mind when Felicia was talking. Could you just, Julie, tell us 2 or 3 tips. How often do we need really to sit down and evaluate our training? Yeah, once we have done, we designed a good training and we have delivered that and we implemented whatever the target we set. How often and how can we do that in really a proper way? Thank you.
Yeah, it's, oh, sorry, are you finished? Oh,
Yes,
okay.
go ahead.
Yeah,
Julie.
no, that evaluation is a very important question. And the answer is it depends. Obviously, when you're delivering face-to-face training, you can see how the students are reacting. But if you can have some kind of element where they're performing, so that you can see, okay, we explained this, and now you are practicing, so we can see if there's if they understood or if there's any misconceptions that came from the initial training. And so that can be, you know, you want always to see whether or not, if you created this training, can these people actually do the thing? And there's a bunch of different ways to do that. You can do practice, you know, right there and watch them. You can create some kind of checklist or something that their manager or their supervisor can use when they go back to make sure that they're doing the things right. When we create things that are digital or materials that get sent out, that is much harder. But one of the things that you can often do with a digital resource, so if you create a tutorial and you've got somebody who can go on Zoom or, you know, Skype or a platform, is you can have them share their computer screen if they're learning something from a computer, and you can watch while they go through it and see where they are confused or where they have questions or where maybe they don't seem to understand. And so anything that we can do to be able to see, is it working? And then can we adjust things so that it's easier to understand or easier for people to use? If you're face-to-face, you can do it one way. Obviously, face-to-face is harder with COVID. If it's digital or electronic, or even if it's paper materials, you can sometimes watch people use it just through like a Zoom or a Skype or something where they're actually going through it and you're seeing what their reactions are, and they can tell you, you know, can they answer the questions about it or can they use the thing? So trying to find any way that we can to know if what we've created is effective is very important from an evaluation point of view.
Thank you, Julie. Yes, this is the most interactive and very, very important session. We are witnessing a very great team from the participants as well. So for now, I don't see any question from the chat. Please write as your questions to Julie in the chat room, or ask me to join to the plenary if you want to say something in the discussion. Julie, okay, until we find another question, may I say something from the Teach to Reach Level 1 certificate course? One of the very important that has amazed me and impressed me during your course was the gap analysis. When we are going to select our trainings, we have this gap analysis, whether it's information, procedural, skill, and so on, around 5 gap analysis. So I was very amazed and enjoyed to do my trainings in that analysis, but I was a bit confused whether how practical and how feasible are they, you know, to select only specific gaps and give that training, again select a specific gaps, then give a training for that, or is it, you know, you can just provide, you just analyze the gaps, but still it's possible to provide within the training time frame, like 1 day or 2 days, like a kind of mixed trainings. How do you brief this one, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea is you might have a gap, you might have a training objective, like being able to perform data analysis on survey information, which was the question that Solange had at the beginning. And as I said, I think there's some procedural stuff we can do where we say, here, do this, do this, do this, and we can make rules, but there's also a bigger skill. And so the question with that is, if you only have 1 or 2 days, you want to have some of the things that they can take away and do immediately from that. But you also want to look at the question of if data analysis is also, so there's knowledge, procedure, skills, you know, habits maybe on data analysis. So if we look at all of those gaps, we would say, if I have 2 days to train, I need to make sure they have this knowledge, that they can do these procedures, and we'll start working on skills. We probably won't be able to do all of the skill development in 2 days. Most skills are more complicated than that. But what I can look at is, if we start with the skill, which is starting to understand the bigger concepts around data analysis, how will I follow up? So can I follow up after 30 days or 60 days or 90 days with a little bit more practice and development around, hey, you've been doing this for a little while. Let's come back and talk about, here's the next thing, and look at the question of how are we going to develop something like that over time, because skills are always slower than procedures. Procedures are exact. We know exactly what correct performance is. Skills are often more, they have to use their judgment. And in order to develop skills, often what happens is people need to see many, many, many examples. And you can only show somebody so many examples up front, but then you want to figure out, how do I come back and see more examples later? So under something like data analysis, maybe you have a Zoom call or something once a month where somebody shares a data analysis problem, and an expert can help them work through it, but everybody can see. And so then after a year, you've gotten to see 12 different examples of how you can do data analysis. And so that can be a slower time frame for developing that skill.
Great. That's really wonderful, Julie. And this is very, very clear now. Some more questions are coming in the chat room. Mohammed is asking you how to address attitude and behavior learning gaps. Right.
Yeah. I don't know. I can make sure that Reda has the materials. But the reason behind behavior and attitude gaps matters a lot. So is it that somebody doesn't have the right information and that can help with a behavior or attitude gap? Or is it that they know the information, but they don't believe it because mistrust, or they're just not convinced? So in one case, the answer is information. If they know the information, but they still don't believe or think it's important, then it might be about persuasion. It might be about that social modeling piece that we talked, where you have to see somebody you trust endorse it. If they know and they trust and they believe, but maybe they're just not sure how to get started. So maybe the answer is helping people, just with some simple stuff that they can do right away. So depending on what the issue is, sometimes they know, they believe, they want to do it, but the system is making it very difficult. It's hard because, I'm sorry, there's some noise in the background. Let me know if it's a problem, and move inside. But
it's quite fine.
Okay, is it okay? So sometimes the issue is they want to do the right thing, but something about the system is making it difficult for them to do it. So then the question is there anything we can do to make the action easier? So attitude and behavior always has a reason. It's not just because people are difficult. There's always something that's causing that to happen. If it's that they, if they don't agree with the change that's being made, then it can be about sometimes having a conversation about what strategies would be best so that they feel like they're getting their voice heard and that they're participating in the conversation. You know, there's a lot of different things. So it just really depends. Sometimes people don't want to do something because they're kind of worried that they're going to get yelled at, or somebody's going to get, you know, there's going to be some kind of negative consequence, and then can we address that? Or can they practice it and realize, oh, it's not so bad, I can actually do this? So the answers for attitude or behavior really depends on why the attitude or behavior exists in the first place. And then you can start to look at ways to address that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Julie. I hope Muhammad have got a very comprehensive answer for his question. And before I go to the next question, I once again want to remind our participants, please ask your question on training design, what your major challenges in immunization you are facing, and please give an example of a training you designed and organized as necessary. So please, you are meeting one of the world's best teacher in instructional design and training designs. And Julie, we have a topic from Nigeria, and he's asking how can instructional design enhance motivation in a scenario whereby health workers have environmental challenges or low morale regarding job satisfaction, like promotion, reward, incentives, or whatever. So can you address this, please?
Yes, and I know that we talked about that when we were working on some immunization training for Nigeria. And you know, one of the questions that came up when I think at the last Teach to Reach is how do you motivate somebody who hasn't maybe been paid in many months? And I'm like, well, you know, first you need to pay them, but when those challenges exist, and there will always be circumstances where we can't necessarily reward people the way that they should be. The best strategy, and it's not perfect because obviously, you know, we want people to be treated fairly, but the best strategy that I have is to help people identify with the values that brought them to being a health worker in the first place. You know, why do they think their job is important? Why do they think what they do is helpful or making a difference or having a sense of purpose? And often if you can get them to tell you the reasons why their job is important, so you don't say your job is important because, you ask the question, you know, can you tell me why your job is important? Can you tell me what you do for your community? Can you tell me how you help people? And if you can help people kind of engage with those values and that sense of purpose, that can sometimes really help. Also, people who feel like they don't have any control over anything often feel very unmotivated or depressed. So they see this thing, they think they could fix it or make it better, but they don't have any control or any authority to do so. And so is there any way that you can give those workers the ability to have control over certain parts of their environment or their process, and then recognize when they're taking actions and, you know, commending it and recognizing it, you know, within a team or within a community when they're taking actions that are helpful, so that they feel like what they're doing isn't pointless, or that they feel like they're being recognized for what contributions they bring. So those are some things you can do with a low motivated group, you know, invoking values, thinking about their sense of identity as somebody who helps and does really important work, and giving them some sense of control over, you can't, obviously nobody can have control over everything, but is there something where they can have some control so that they feel like they're making a contribution?
Thank you. This is really very important, Julie. Still, some questions are coming in our chat, and we have in the plenary with us our long-time scholar also in Teach to Reach, a very active participant from India, New Delhi. Sohini, I have seen you have some question in the chat, so you are also in the plenary with us. Can you please ask yourself to Julie, so your question if you are listening me, please.
Yes. Hi, Fitri. Thank you so much. So, Julie, my question was that, when we train someone on a new topic, something they don't know, they're usually quite motivated and they see a benefit for themselves in attending such training. However, refresher trainings are very difficult, because most people feel that they already have the knowledge and experience. And even if they attend the training, they're not really very engaged in it. So if you could share some tips on this, please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's a few possibilities. This is a difficult one because one of the things that happens with refresher trainings is that some of the people in your audience don't actually need everything that's happening in the refresher, and nobody likes to sit through something where they feel like they already know it. Now, sometimes they're right that they already know it, and sometimes they don't know it as well as they think they do. And those are two different things, but it both can produce that attitude of, I don't need this, I already know it. So I think some of that is asking, one of the things you can do is give people something that allows them to sort of self-assess where they think they could, kind of go to the next level. And so often, if we don't present it necessarily as a refresher, but more as like the next level, or, going from, you've got the bronze level, now go for silver, or now go for gold, or, something like that, where they feel like, oh, it's not only just being told the same thing again, but the chance to kind of get better at it. Also, you can ask people to, instead of telling them this stuff again, ask them what do you remember? What have you learned since then? So that they're a little bit more actively participating in the training or the conversation, rather than having to just kind of listen to stuff another time. And we know that they may think they know it and they don't really. That happens. But if you can help people kind of identify where their own gaps in their knowledge are in a way that doesn't feel like they're being yelled at or being judged. Some of the best learning outcomes come from, you know what, I'm so sorry. This is going to be a little bit noisy. If it gets too noisy, I'll grab my computer and go inside.
Quite fine. It's quite fine from our side, Julie. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. So if we can look at doing that where they, so some of the best research is in things like retrieval practice. So see how much you remember about this topic, and then, whether it's a quiz or something where you can then identify, oh, I know this well, I know this well, I know this well, but this and this I don't know so well. Then they at least feel like the refresher has purpose because they've identified their own gaps in memory or knowledge.
Wonderful, Julie. Thank you so much. I hope, Sohini, you have something to react?
No, I was just going to thank you for the excellent tips.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, good. I hope it's helpful.
Thank you, Julie. Still, questions are coming. I'm not quite sure how much they are typically relating to the structural. Training design. Emmanuel is asking you, how can we ensure fully participating and understanding of during virtual trainings in practical sessions?
Yeah. So a few things about virtual trainings. If you want people to fully participate, one of the things you should think about is how many people are in a virtual training session. And sometimes it has to be a lot. That just is the practical answer. But if you want to be able to engage with students, if you think about it, you might not have more than 30 students in a real classroom or 50 students in a real classroom, but we'll put 500 people into a virtual training. Well, when you've got 500 people in a training, you're going to have people who feel disconnected or people who are distracted and doing other things. So a couple of tips for virtual training. One is address the issue right up front at the beginning. say, we understand you're going to also want to be checking your email, or you're going to be wanting to look at other stuff while you're doing this, but we're asking you to kind of commit, you know, and you can ask them to type into the chat that they're going to commit to paying, you know, allocating their full attention. So you ask for their attention at the beginning. And then also ask them questions throughout that they answer, whether it's in chat or, you know, you can use polls or something where there's something that they're actually having to do within the training so that they can stay engaged. And it doesn't have to be anything complicated. It can be, hey, have any of you had experience with this? Tell me about it in the chat. Or, hey, has anybody, you know, had any challenges with this? Tell me in the chat. Something that kind of keeps them having to like go back and participate in the training will help them stay engaged and help them continue to pay attention. You can also ask individual people for responses if it's a smaller group, so that they know that you as the instructor are talking directly to them sometimes, and that helps them go, oh, I need to pay attention. I can't just leave it on, you know, leave it in the corner of my screen and do other stuff.
Thank you, Julie. I think we are almost near to the time. By 15. We are going to the stage, and we have 1 or 2 questions. Felicia is asking, like, how can we ensure commitment in service delivery on the part of the health workers? And the same question from it's just herself. So can you address this one? We have around 3 minutes to go.
Oh, okay. Commitment and service delivery. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I understand exactly what that question's about. I'm sorry, I know we don't have much time.
Yes. So I think these are the questions I have in the chat rooms, Julie. It has been an amazing discussion, and I'm very sure we have around 54, 55 participants throughout our session, and from different countries across the world. And this is not really simply that we get it in a simple or in something. This is extraordinary to have you and share your experience. And we hear a lot of questions, a lot of experiences from the scholars as well. So I really thank you so much for the participants, as well as for you, Julie, for helping us this much commitment and dedication of your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been really wonderful to kind of hear what people have going on and things like that. I saw some really nice comments about the virtual training using breakout rooms, or, you know, the idea that you sometimes hear from the same set of people. I'm going to put a link in the chat to some resources around virtual training. And there's people who are far more expert than I am about how to do good virtual training. And so that webpage in particular is one that I think has a lot of really nice resources about how do you keep engaged in virtual training and what are some strategies you can use.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you so much. So, dear our participants, please, I have inboxed, I have put on the chat room the resources you can get about our discussion, the notes our reports are taking from this session. So thank you so much, every one of you, for having you, and for Julie joining us. Just we clap for ourselves. Thank you so much, Julie.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.